Rain tapped softly against the office windows as Lee Suha adjusted his tie in the reflection of the elevator doors. Ninth floor, Monday morning. The same gray walls, the same fluorescent lights, the same exhausting routine, and the same dangerous man waiting inside. Secretary Lee. Just hearing Director Park Jiwoon's voice made Suha straighten automatically. Calm, deep, controlled. The kind of voice that sounded expensive. Yes, Director. Jiwoon stood near the conference table, flipping through documents with one hand. His suit jacket rested perfectly against broad shoulders, dark hair neatly brushed back. Every employee in the company admired him. Unfortunately, Suha admired him a little too much. The client meeting has been moved to 2, Jiwoon said. Prepare the revised schedule. A small pause followed. Jiwoon looked up slowly, eyes lingering on Suha for a second longer than necessary. Efficient as always. Suha smiled professionally, though his chest tightened. That's my job. He turned away before his expression betrayed him. For 2 years he had worked beside Park Jiwoon without crossing a line. No flirting, no mistakes, no fantasies during office hours. Well, almost none. At night was different. By midnight, Suha stood under pulsing neon lights inside a crowded bar downtown. Music thundered through the walls, while strangers laughed, drank, and touched without hesitation. This place had rules simpler than the office. No pretending. A man approached him near the counter. Tall, attractive enough. You alone? The stranger asked. For now. The man smirked and leaned closer. Want company? Suha considered it. Maybe tonight would finally distract him from thoughts he shouldn't have. But before he could answer, movement near the hallway caught his attention. His entire body froze. No way. Park Jiwoon stood near the entrance to the private lounge, sleeve rolled slightly past his wrists, expression unreadable. For one horrifying second, neither of them moved. The stranger beside Suha noticed his distraction. You know him? Suha couldn't answer, because Jiwoon was staring directly at him. Not shocked, not angry, just interested. Then Jiwoon calmly walked toward him. Every step tightened the knot in Suha's stomach. Secretary Lee, Jiwoon said smoothly, as if they'd met in the office cafeteria instead of a gay bar at midnight. Suha forced himself to breathe. Director Park. The stranger awkwardly excused himself almost immediately. Jiwoon's gaze followed the man briefly before returning to Suha. I didn't expect to see you here. You could say the same thing. A faint smile touched Jiwoon's lips. It was the first real smile Suha had ever seen from him. And somehow, that was more dangerous than anything else. The music pounded around them, while silence stretched tight between their bodies. Then Jiwoon leaned slightly closer. Would you like a drink? He asked quietly. Suha knew he should refuse. He also knew he wouldn't. The next evening, Suha arrived at work 10 minutes earlier than usual, which was ridiculous. He had spent all night replaying the encounter at the bar in his head. Jiwoon's calm expression, the low tone of his voice, the way his eyes lingered without shame. And worst of all, the director had acted completely normal afterward. Good morning. Suha nearly jumped when Jiwoon entered the office. Dark coat, coffee in hand, perfect as always. Morning, director. Jiwoon placed a folder on Suha's desk. You look tired. I slept late. A pause. Were you drinking? Suha narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you asking as my boss? Jiwoon's lips curved faintly. That answer hit harder than expected. Before Suha could respond, another employee entered carrying documents, and the moment disappeared instantly. Jiwoon became professional again, discussing schedules and meetings as though nothing unusual had happened. But Suha noticed things now. The director standing slightly closer than necessary, the occasional glance. the quiet attention hidden beneath his calm face. By lunchtime, Suha's nerves were already fraying. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Dinner tonight? No name attached, but Suha knew immediately who it was. He stared at the message for a full minute. "Are you asking your secretary out?" The reply came almost instantly. "I'm asking Lee Suha." His heart betrayed him with one violent thump. The restaurant Jiwoon chose was quiet and expensive, tucked high above the city with dim lighting and private booths. Of course it was. Jiwoon sat across from him, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, while he poured wine into Suha's glass. "You come here often?" Suha asked. "Sometimes." "With dates?" Jiwoon looked up calmly. "No." The honesty made Suha strangely nervous. For a while, they talked normally. Work, clients, meaningless office gossip. It almost felt comfortable. Then Jiwoon asked softly, "Do you usually go to bars alone?" Straight to the point. Suha smirked. Curious? Yes. That simple answer left no room to hide. Suha leaned back in his chair. "I go when I'm bored." "And do you find what you're looking for?" "Usually not." Jiwoon's gaze darkened slightly. "Your standards must be high." "You noticed?" "I notice many things about you." The air between them shifted instantly. Dangerous. Warm. Too intimate. Suha looked away first. Outside the windows, rain shimmered across the city lights. Inside, Jiwoon quietly removed his jacket and draped it over the back of the chair beside him. Such a small action, yet strangely domestic. "You know," Suha said carefully, "most people would panic after seeing their employee in a gay bar bathrobe." Jiwoon rested his chin lightly against one hand. "Should I have panicked?" "No, but surprised, maybe." "I was surprised. You didn't show it." "I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." That answer caught him off guard. Jiwoon continued calmly, "You looked worried enough already." For the first time that night, Suha couldn't think of a teasing response, because beneath Jiwoon's composed expression was something unexpectedly gentle, and that was far more dangerous than attraction. Their food arrived, interrupting the silence. But halfway through dinner, Jiwoon suddenly asked, "Why do you avoid relationships?" Suha froze slightly. "Too personal. Way too personal." He forced a laugh. "Why? Planning to date me?" Jiwoon didn't smile this time. "If I were," he said quietly, "would that be a problem?" The world seemed to stop for one unbearable second. Suha stared at him. Jiwoon held his gaze steadily, completely serious, and suddenly Suha realized something terrifying. This wasn't flirting anymore. Late night. Rain falls softly outside Suha's apartment window. Suha sits on his bed, staring at his phone. Recent message visible. "Jiwoon, did you get home safely?" Suha throws himself backward onto the bed. Suha thought, "Why is he acting like this?" Flashback of Jiwoon under the umbrella. Jiwoon, flashback. "Good night, Suha." Morning office lobby. Employees move busily around. Suha walks in carrying coffee. Still tired. Elevator doors open. Jiwoon stands inside, alone again. Awkward silence fills the elevator. Close-up of elevator numbers rising. Ding, ding. Jiwoon glances sideways. "Jiwoon, you ignored my message." Suha avoids eye contact. "Suha, I didn't know replying was mandatory." Jiwoon steps slightly closer. "Jiwoon, it wasn't, but I still waited." Suha's eyes widen slightly. Elevator doors open. SFX, ding. Suha exits quickly. "Suha, you enjoy making people uncomfortable." Jiwoon watches him leave calmly. "Jiwoon, only you." Office meeting room. Large presentation underway. Suha confidently explains charts beside the screen. A younger male client smiles at him. Secretary Lee is impressive. Jiwoon watches silently from across the room. Expression unreadable. Meeting ends. Employees begin leaving. The client stops Suha near the doorway. "Can I buy you dinner sometime?" Before Suha answers, Ji-won suddenly appears beside him. Ji-won, Secretary Lee already has plans tonight. The client awkwardly backs away. Hallway outside meeting room. Suha, what was that? Ji-woon loosens his tie slightly. Ji-woon, he was flirting with you. Suha crosses his arms. Suha, and? Ji-woon's gaze sharpens slightly. Ji-woon, I didn't like it. Suha freezes completely. Heartbeat close-up. Thump. Suha laughs nervously. Suha, you're joking. Ji-woon doesn't smile. Ji-woon, do I look like I'm joking? Evening office. Most employees gone. Suha works alone under dim lights. Ji-woon enters, carrying convenience store ramen and drinks. Ji-woon, dinner. Suha stares. Suha, you seriously brought instant noodles? Both sit on the office floor near the window, eating together. City lights glowing outside. Relaxed atmosphere. Suha, you're weirdly different outside work. Ji-woon looks at him quietly. Ji-woon, you bring that side out. Suha looks away immediately, blushing slightly. Silence settles comfortably. Ji-woon suddenly asks, Ji-woon, why do you avoid relationships? Suha's smile fades slightly. Suha, that's personal. Ji-woon studies him carefully. Flashback panel. A blurry figure walking away from younger Suha. Suha forces a careless smile. Suha, people lose interest eventually. Ji-woon answers immediately. Ji-woon, I wouldn't. Suha looks genuinely shaken. Close-up of Ji-woon leaning closer slowly. Ji-woon, I don't think I could. Their faces inches apart now. Ji-woon gently brushes hair away from Suha's forehead. Suha stops breathing for a second. Very quiet atmosphere. Only city lights and rain outside. Suha whispers softly. Suha, you're dangerous. Ji-won's expression softens. Ji-won, probably. Their foreheads nearly touch. Large final panel. Office hallway. Lights suddenly turn on outside. Both immediately pull apart. Tension remains heavy between them. The distance between them was disappearing too quickly. Rain fell steadily outside the hospital windows. The waiting room lights were dim, casting soft shadows across Park Jiwoon's exhausted face. Lee Suha sat beside him silently, both hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup that had long gone cold. Neither of them moved away. Jiwoon finally spoke first. You should go home. Suha glanced sideways. You asked me to stay. I did. Then stop trying to act considerate now. A faint smile appeared on Ji-woon's lips. Even tired, he looked unfairly handsome. Suha immediately looked away before his expression betrayed him. The silence between them no longer felt awkward. That was the problem. A few hours ago, Suha would have found an excuse to leave. He would have escaped before things became too personal. Now he was sitting in a hospital at 3 in the morning beside a man he definitely shouldn't be falling for. Dangerous. Very dangerous. Ji-woon loosened his tie slightly before leaning back against the chair. My father hates hospitals, he said quietly. Suha blinked in surprise. It was the first personal thing Ji-woon had volunteered willingly. You too close? Ji-woon laughed softly, cold, not amused. No. The answer came immediately. Suha studied him carefully. Under the calm expression, Ji-woon looked strangely distant tonight, smaller, somehow. Human. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Suha said quietly. Jiwoon turned toward him slowly. I don't dislike talking to you. There it was again, that unbearable honesty. Suha's heartbeat betrayed him instantly. To cover it, he took a sip of cold coffee and grimaced. This is awful. Jiwoon glanced at the cup. You still drank it. You looked emotionally unstable, I panicked. That actually made Jiwoon laugh properly this time. A real laugh. Warm. Suha stared before he could stop himself. Jiwoon noticed immediately. What? Suha shook his head quickly. Nothing. You're staring. You smiled. And that's surprising? A little. Jiwoon looked at him quietly for a moment. Then, most people don't make me want to. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Again, always because of him. Suha exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. You really enjoy saying dangerous things. Jiwoon's gaze lowered briefly toward Suha's lips before returning to his eyes. Only when they're true. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that made breathing difficult. Suha suddenly stood up. I need air. Without waiting for a response, he walked toward the vending machines down the hallway. His heart was beating too fast. This was getting bad. No, worse than bad, because Jiwoon wasn't playing games. Everything he said sounded terrifyingly sincere. Suha pressed both hands against his face with a frustrated groan. What are you doing to me? Probably the same thing you're doing to me. Suha nearly jumped. Jiwoon stood a few steps behind him now, coat hanging loosely over one arm. You walk quietly for a rich person, Suha muttered. Jiwoon ignored that completely. Instead, he stepped closer. Why are you avoiding me? I'm not. You keep running away whenever things become serious. Direct hit. Suha looked away immediately. Jiwoon continued quietly. Do you dislike me that much? That question hurt more than expected, because the answer was the complete opposite, and both of them knew it. Suha laughed weakly. You really don't understand your own effect on people. Then, explain it to me. Jiwoon stood close enough now that Suha could smell rain and faint cologne. Close enough to be dangerous again. You make everything complicated, Suha admitted softly. Jiwoon's expression gentled. Is that why you're scared? The word scared irritated him instantly. I'm not scared, liar. Suha glared at him. You're very confident for someone standing in a hospital hallway at 4 in the morning. Jiwoon took one more step closer. Now there was almost no distance left between them. I'm confident about one thing. Suha swallowed hard despite himself. And what's that? Jiwoon's eyes locked onto his completely. That you want me too. The world seemed to stop. Rain against windows, dim fluorescent lights. The sound of Suha's heartbeat becoming unbearably loud. Jiwoon slowly lifted one hand toward his face. Gentle, careful, as though giving him time to pull away. But Suha didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't think. Jiwoon's fingers brushed lightly against his cheek, then quietly. Tell me to stop. Suha stared at him for one long second, and realized he couldn't. The hospital hallway felt too quiet. Lee Suha still stood frozen against the wall, while Park Jiwoon's hand rested gently against his cheek. Tell me to stop. Jiwoon's voice was low, careful, as though he truly would stop if Suha asked. That was the problem. Suha stared at him for one unbearable second, and realized he didn't want him to stop at all. His heartbeat pounded violently. You really make this difficult, Suha whispered. Jiwoon's eyes softened slightly. But you're still here. Another direct hit. Suha let out a shaky breath. You always talk like you already know the answer. Jiwoon stepped closer until there was almost no space left between them. Because I can see you shaking. Damn him. Suha hated how observant he was. Before he could think properly, Jiwoon's fingers slid lightly along his jaw. Gentle, nothing forceful about it. And somehow that tenderness affected Suha more than confidence ever could. Jiwoon. It was the first time he had said his name so naturally. Jiwoon immediately noticed. The expression in his eyes changed instantly. Warmer. Dangerous. Say it again, he said quietly. Suha looked away at once. Don't get weird about it. A soft laugh escaped Jiwoon. Then silence settled again. Heavy silence. The kind filled with things neither of them were saying aloud. Finally, Jiwoon asked, "Can I kiss you?" Suha's breath caught immediately. No teasing, no arrogance. Jiwoon was asking seriously, waiting seriously. That sincerity made him feel even more cornered. You ask impossible questions, Suha muttered weakly. Jiwoon didn't move away. Is that a no? Suha couldn't answer, because every instinct telling him to run was losing badly against the part of him that wanted this more than he should. Jiwoon slowly leaned closer. Close enough for Suha to feel his breathing. Close enough to become terrifying. But even then, Jiwoon paused one last time, giving him another chance. Suha's fingers tightened slightly around Jiwoon's sleeve. That was all the permission Jiwoon needed. The kiss was soft, careful. Nothing like the reckless fantasies Suha had imagined late at night. Jiwoon kissed him like something precious, and somehow that affected him the most. Suha's mind went completely blank. Warmth spread through his chest so suddenly it almost hurt. When Jiwoon finally pulled back slightly, their foreheads rested together. Neither spoke immediately. Suha could still feel his heartbeat racing uncontrollably. Jiwoon looked just as affected, though calmer about it. Unfairly calmer. You look shocked, Jiwoon murmured. I am shocked. That actually made Jiwoon smile. Small, real. Suha stared before groaning quietly. Stop smiling like that. Like what? Like you're happy. I am. Again, terrifying honesty. Suha covered part of his face with one hand in embarrassment. You really have no self-control tonight. Jiwoon gently pulled his hand away. Only around you. The answer came so naturally that Suha stopped breathing for a second. How was this man real? Before he could recover, footsteps echoed somewhere farther down the hallway. Both men immediately stepped apart. Reality crashed back in again. Suha ran a hand through his hair roughly. This is bad. Jiwoon adjusted his loosened tie calmly. It didn't feel bad. That's not what I meant. Jiwoon looked at him quietly for a moment before asking, Do you regret it? The question hurt unexpectedly, because Suha already knew the answer. No, he admitted softly. And that was the most dangerous part of all. Jiwoon's expression gentled in a way Suha still wasn't used to seeing. Then, without warning, Jiwoon reached for his hand, their fingers intertwined naturally, like they already belonged there. Suha stared silently. You're doing that very confidently for someone who just ruined my emotional stability, he muttered. Jiwoon's thumb brushed lightly across his knuckles. I'm not letting you run away now. Suha should have argued, should have pulled away. Instead, he held on tighter.